August is upon us, which means the expansion is upon us. And you guys, even if you're altaholics and you want to play a lot of alts, usually you still gotta pick a main. Okay, I already know what mine is. I don't play alts. I am Samiccus, and Samiccus is I. I'm playing my Blood DK. Come hell or high water, I'll be playing him no matter what. But maybe you haven't decided what your main is going to be. This is your guide to picking the perfect main in WoW, The War Within from Still Solo.
Picking your main can be one of the toughest decisions you make when playing World of Warcraft, and it's never been more of a difficult choice than it is right now. While it may be easy to follow trends and get hyped over tier list videos, I wanted to make a guide on the right way to pick your main that isn't going to leave you frustrated if you end up picking what your favorite YouTuber tells you is some godly S tier spec. No, in this video,
play Blood DK. It's the best spec in the game. I'm the YouTuber telling you right now. If you want to feel like an unkillable god, pre-nerfs. Now, the nerfs are coming. We already know that. Tanks are going to suck in The War Within. But you want to play God mode, Big Dick mode, Blood DK.
I'll be giving you a series of questions that you should answer that will help you make the right choice and will increase your chances of success and enjoyment in whatever class or spec you decide to play. And lastly, be sure to stick around for the end of the video where I'll be giving you guys my top suggestions for each role in the game that you can't go wrong with. So the first thing I wanted to talk about with this video is going to be the Warband System. Now, the Warband System is going to be that new feature that's coming to The War Within, which is going to allow us to have shared progression between all of our ults. And in my opinion, I think the Warband System is going to basically make the option of picking our main that much easier. Yeah. Essentially, the Warband System is alt insurance. Now, prior to this expansion, I think picking
True, I mean, if you picked a main in Legion, you better have stuck with him, because if you didn't, you were far behind. You had to grind all that AP again and everything. So yeah, that was a thing. Certainly in The War Within, if you pick a main and you don't like it too much, guess what? All the currencies and everything are pretty much transferable. So you can just switch to a different one.
Was probably a more permanent and more serious decision, but because of the Warband System, it's going to be a lot easier, because now if you guys pick your main and, you know, down the road you're just not feeling it, you'll be able to swap characters pretty easily with the Warband System, because the Warband System is basically, you know, shared progression between all of our characters, and obviously you'll have those Warbound items that you'll be collecting that you can gear up your ults with. Right. And on top of that, I also highly suggest that whatever main you decide to pick, you should always have a backup option. That means having an ult that you play regularly that wouldn't require a ton of time and dedication to gear up if you decided to switch characters.
Sure.
If there's one thing that I wanted you guys to take away from this video above all else, it is this. Do not chase the flavor of the month. I know how tough this one can be, because I personally love tier list videos, and it's always really hard to watch these videos. You know, someone will be like, oh yeah, Subtlety Rogue's S tier, it's gonna blow everything out of the water. You guys...
He said it wrong, it's Sub-Titty Rogue. But anyways, moving on from that, yes, that's how I play my main, my Blood DK. I don't switch between whatever tank is S tier. Like, I'm not playing Demon Hunter right now because it literally shits on everything else. Because at the end of the day, if you're constantly switching based on that, for one, you're never going to really get good at any single class, because you're just always switching between them, and you really got to develop that kind of muscle memory with your class. You got to get really, really into it to become really good at it. And then second, I feel like you'll just never be happy, because that stuff's going to change from patch to patch, and it's just not a good way to play the game. To invest time in whatever's S tier at the moment, you know, the common adage, what goes up must come down, that's going to happen with every single class. So don't be chasing, just play what you like.
Need to play this, and you're sitting here watching the video and you're just like, dang, I really should play a rogue right now. But I'm here to tell you guys, do not do this. King. Chasing the flavor of the month is never a good option, because two things are going to happen. Firstly, you're going to spend a bunch of time and investment into gearing up this flavor of the month spec, only to have it be nerfed into the ground later on, and you're going to be really frustrated. On top of that, also, the flavor of the month might be something that you don't enjoy playing, and that's going to burn you out later on down the road. And I get it. You probably want to be playing something that's OP and just does really well. I do too, but the thing is, when it comes to balance tuning in World of Warcraft, it just changes way too much for you to have that be a consideration when you're trying to pick a main. True. A much better way to go about this is to find a class and spec that you actually enjoy playing, because chances are, eventually, whatever you're playing, at some point during the duration of the expansion, your spec is going to be really good. And that's how balance tuning works.
Exactly.
It's literally a roll of the dice on whether something is going to be good or not, unless you're playing something like a Feral Druid. Sorry guys. So this next question is something that is going to be a really big factor in what you guys want to play, and that is going to be, are you a more casual player or a more hardcore player? And what do I mean by this? I
Okay.
consider a casual player someone that, plays only a few hours a week. Maybe they have like an hour or two after work on the weekends, something like that. They do LFR, or maybe they've dipped their toes into the normal mode of the raid, or even done a few low levels of Mythic Plus. Now, if that sounds like you guys have the best choices because you can literally pick
That sounds
whatever
like
you want
you.
to play.
What
Balance
are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Going around touching grass or something? Get in the game, do something that matters. Play more WoW.
tuning and player
Come on.
perception do not apply to you guys. Now, if you're a hardcore player, there are some things that you do need to consider when picking your main, and that's going to be balance tuning and player perception. Hey there, buddy. Didn't you just say that not to pick flavor of the month and play what you enjoy? Yes, I did say that, but there is a big difference between trying to pick the flavor of the month and chasing trends versus not picking the DPS that is bottom of the barrel when it comes to damage and never getting invited to a group. And that is the main reason why I always tell everyone to have a backup ult. And that is why I think Warbands is such an awesome feature for the War Within, because again, it's going to make having that backup character so much easier to maintain and have ready in case whatever class and spec you picked is just terrible. The next big question you need to ask yourself is, do you want to tank, DPS, or heal? Maybe you want to do a couple.
Tank. You want to tank. Because you're going to get invites to shit more often. You're gonna your mistakes, yes, they're more under a microscope because when you die, everybody dies, kind of thing. But it also gives you a feeling of a massive cock, and that's always a good thing. Whether you have one or not, you will feel like you have one when you're tanking. 'Cause you're the leader at the end of the day. You're like the unspoken leader. It just gives you that feeling of being in a leadership position. Now, if you're not that kind of person, you want to drop back into the background a little bit, then playing DPS is probably your best choice.
Couple of things.
Range DPS,
maybe you want to
more
DPS,
specifically.
but also tank when you need to, or maybe you want to do all of them. Some choices definitely have more options than others. For example, a druid is going to be a really good pick if you want to literally do everything in the game, because the druid can literally do everything. It can tank, it can heal, it's got a melee and a range DPS option, and regardless of the spec that you play on the druid, it's got a ton of utility that people want in their groups. So definitely take a look at the different classes that you're thinking about and see what kind of options they have for their specs. Another thing that I want you guys to take into consideration when you're picking your class and spec is something that I call reroll insurance. Now, this mainly is more focused towards DPS players, but that is basically picking a class that has multiple specs that all DPS. So that way, if your spec that you're playing and enjoying...
I've always said that before, like if you play Rogue, Mage, Warlock, odds are one of your 3 specs is going to be like in the top 3 of DPS at any given time. So he's totally right about that. Those are good ones to pick if you just want to ensure that like at least one of your specs is probably going to be viable.
Is not very good. You still have 2 other options that are more than likely going to be a lot better than what you're currently using. So for example, let's say you're playing a mage, right? And you love playing Arcane, but Arcane's not performing really well. Well, you have 2 other options. There's probably a very good chance that Fire or Frost are both doing pretty good. So instead of having to reroll to a brand new class, you can just swap specs and play something that just does a little bit better. And this brings up a really good point, and that is whatever class you guys decide to play, make sure that you enjoy playing all of the specs that it brings to the table. If you just absolutely love playing a Shadow Priest, but you hate playing Discipline or Holy, what happens if Shadow ends up being really bad? That's literally the only DPS spec for Priest, so your chances are you're either going to one trick and just, stick with playing the Shadow Priest even when it's really bad, or you're just going to have to play something else. This next question is going to drastically...
Just FYI though, I have seen people who are just so damn good, like they just have a skill level that is unmatched in the game, take like a class that is considered like bottom of the barrel shit DPS and actually pump really hard with it. Like there are ways to do that, so I don't think any class or spec is necessarily like unplayable at any given time. Now, I'm sure there's been moments where some have been really bad, but for the most part, if you're really good at a class or you just really enjoy playing a class or spec, just play it. Try to get as good as you can at it, and usually it'll still be viable. Will you get invites less often? Maybe. But screw those people.
Affect your choice. And that is going to be simply, are you someone that plays this game by yourself, or are you in a guild, or just have a group of friends that you play the game with? The reason why I say this is because if you are a solo player, you're going to be at the mercy of player perception a lot more than you would if you're playing with a group of friends. And what I mean by this is that you're going to have a really rough time if you're playing a class and spec that a lot of people, or the player perception is, sucks. So, for example, if people...
It's like Ret Pally and Burning Crusade. Like, the only way you were going to play Ret Pally and Burning Crusade is if you have a guild that was going to invite you guaranteed. Otherwise, you were not getting invited to things.
Think that enhancement shamans are terrible, you're probably going to have a really hard time getting invited to any groups if you're playing an enhancement shaman. And then on the other side, if you are part of a guild or you've got a group of friends that you guys play the game with regularly, who cares what the player perception is? Because your friends are going to invite you because you're their friend. So now it's time for me to give you guys my recommendations of what I think are going to be really good picks going into the War Within, regardless of balance tuning. Now, as a quick disclaimer, I just want to remind you guys, my choices are not based off of DPS or performance or anything like that. My choices are simply what I think are fun, approachable, and very versatile picks that you guys can play and have a really good time with. So starting off with tanks. My first pick here is going to be the Mountain Thang Protection Warrior, mainly because I just really like the aesthetic of it.
It's like a thunderclapping spam or, you know, thunderclapping orgasm. That's the way people are describing it. Like, people really like Mountain Thang. I got to see how this plays.
From Warcraft 3, so it's really cool that they're bringing that back into the game. And also the play around Thunderclap.
He's already done like 20
Front Warriors are just generally overall really good tanks when it comes to taking and absorbing damage. So you really can't go wrong.
Yeah, we'll be done by then.
My next pick is going to be the Sand Lane Blood Death Knight, mainly because I feel like with Blood Death Knights, they're just really good at self-healing, even though they just got a massive nerf to that with that last patch. But I do think the whole idea of a Blood Death Knight / vampire kind of thing fits really well with the Blood DK, and I feel like it's just going to have a ton of even more self-healing than it has before. Plus, Blood DKs are really easy to play, and Death Grip is just so good.
Wait a minute. What do you mean easy to play? What do you mean easy to play? If we don't keep all our shit up and constantly heal ourselves, we die. Whereas a warrior could just dick around most of the time, take a hit to the face, and keep going. What is he talking about, easy to play?
Good to have. My last pick for the recommendation for tanking is going to be the Druid of the Claw Guardian Druid. Mainly because I think
they're not easy to play. Shit, now I'm never going to hear the end of it.
I think the improvements with the shape-shifting is going to be really good, and I think it's just going to flow really well with Guardian Druid in general. Plus, Guardian Druid is just really easy to play. For our DPS picks, I'm going to go with the Arcane Mage, specifically the Spellslinger. Mainly because Arcane recently just got a massive rework. The spec in general is just a lot easier to play now, and the actual play style is really fun. It's really snappy.
I've heard a lot of good things about Arcane.
It's actually the spec that I'm going to be maining in the War Within. My next pick is going to go with the Riders of the Apocalypse, Unholy Death Knight, and I really don't feel like I need to
aesthetically.
Why. I mean, having mounted combat.
I have to say, aesthetically, the mounted combat and the Riders of the Apocalypse have to be the coolest in-game, spells we've ever seen. It's freaking badass. I mean, when you see a Death Knight with the 4 Riders of the Apocalypse riding towards you, if that don't make you ejaculate and shit your pants at the same time, I don't know what will. But that is badass.
The world is really cool. Just the overall theme of this hero talent.
Like, I wish I was going to play Unholy just for this.
And also, Unholy Death Knights have historically been in a really good spot. And then for my last pick for DPS, I'm going to go with the Templar Ret Paladin. The aesthetic of Templar Ret Paladins is just really cool in general. You're just bringing down these hammers, and I think the playstyle is going to be really fun to play. It's really easy, and I think it's going to do really well. For healers, the first one I'm going to go with is going to be the Restoration Shaman, specifically Totemic. I think the new totems that it's going to bring to the table are really cool, and it also looks like they're kind of going back to the whole chain heal playstyle for that healer, which I thought was probably one of the most fun ways to play a healer. And then also, they're bringing Sky Fury, which is a brand new raid buff for shamans. For my next pick, I'm going to go with the Lightsmith Holy Paladin, mainly because Holy Paladins are just one of those picks that are always in the group. You know, when you go to a raid, you always have a Holy Paladin there, so they pretty much are guaranteed a spot because of their kit. And also, I know that Lightsmith has been struggling recently. I know the player perception on the forums has been kind of mixed, but...
like I said before, I feel like Paladins are one of the most played classes in the game, and because of that, they get rapid feedback and rapid fixes, like a lot of times. I feel like Blizzard's always very quick to fix Paladins. And it's because probably their community is so passionate, and they give so much feedback so quickly and vigorously that they get things fixed quickly.
They can iron
I've always said that about Paladins.
Make it a lot better. And then my last pick for the healer is just pure out of nostalgia, and that's going to be the Keeper of the Grove Restoration Druid, mainly because I personally am a Warcraft 3 player, or was, and the whole idea of a Keeper of the Grove coming to the game is really cool.
It's cool.
I'm really interested to see what the treants are going to be like for the healer.
My brother's
but in
very
general,
excited
just having some treants out when you're healing is going to be just really cool to see. Now that you guys have a couple of recommendations to look at when you're trying to pick your main, why don't you do me a favor and click that subscribe button on my channel if you enjoyed this video, because here we cover tons of World of Warcraft content and other RPG games in general, so chances are I'll probably be covering a game that you like. Also, let me know in the comments section what class and spec you guys are considering for the War Within. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I'm still Solo, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Oh damn, look at that thumbnail. Wow. That's a great video. Great video, and I agree with a lot with what he said, you know. At the end of the day, pick what you like. Don't chase the meta. If you want to play it safe, pick a class that has a lot of specs that usually one are viable in. And overall, Death Knights are the best in the game. That's my takeaway. But yeah, great video from Still Solo.